All right, we can go ahead and get started, Jamie. I want to thank our attendees for joining us today, both here on Zoom and on Facebook. And to introduce a little bit about Third Sun, I know we have attendees who might be watching who aren't as familiar with us. We are a women-owned benefit corporation, certified benefit corporation. We are mission-driven. Our mission is to accelerate the shift to clean energy. So it's important to us that we come at solar development from an environmental perspective. And this year we are actually celebrating our 20th anniversary. So we've been in the game for a long time. It doesn't make us old and dusty, it makes us old and knowledgeable. We've been here since the beginning, since the beginning of seeing solar become more of a common thing for residential homeowners. So we've seen a lot of growth and change, and we ourselves have learned a lot in those 20 years. We're excited to be connecting with you online. Right now we can't go to community functions, and for that reason, this platform, Zoom and on Facebook Live, is a great opportunity for us to connect, for you to get to know us the way that we might at a community event or festival, but from the comfort of our own homes and safety of our own homes. And I would also like to, before starting, introduce Jamey. Jamey is one of our residential solar consultants, and the reason that she's taken on today's topic, which is about ground-mounted solar systems, is she works primarily with a rural population in Ohio. Not by any means exclusively rural, but a lot of her territory, a lot of her customers live in rural areas, which means that she kind of tackles and sees ground-mounted systems more often. Jamey's been with Third Sun for 12 years. Is that right, Jamey?
Yep, in September.
Yeah. 12 years in September, which is awesome. Jamey's been a great resource. She's taught me so much, teaches me every day. She's a wealth of knowledge. So it's exciting to get to be the one to pick her brain on this webinar. And if anyone is watching, if you have a question for us on Facebook or on Zoom here, please pop it into the chat feature, to the Q&A feature, and we'll get to those questions at the end of our kind of back and forth little Q&A session. Yeah, so the first thing, we're going to be talking about the advantages of a ground-mounted system, and why some individuals might choose ground-mounted systems. So we'll just tick off a list of why ground-mounted systems are ideal for certain folks. So in some cases, a roof isn't oriented or angled ideally to maximize solar production. Is that correct, Jamey?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's correct, Caitlin. Having a ground-mounted system gives you control and the advantage over orientating the array exactly south or 180 degrees south, and also gives you control over the tilt angle, because most roof mounted installations are flush mounted to the pitch of the roof, and that could be, there could be a variety of roof pitches in different roof scenarios. With a ground mounted installation, like I said, we can orientate the panels 180 degrees south, and we have a tilt angle, usually with a racking system, at about 30 degrees, which is ideal for maximum solar production in our longitude and latitude between the balance of summer and winter performance.
Awesome. So another reason that folks might choose a ground-mounted system over a roof-mounted system is that some roofs are too small to get the desired energy offset.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and sometimes that is the case as well with roof-mounted installations. Not always the case, but sometimes the case. There may be roofing obstructions that are causing a smaller footprint on the roof, which can cause installation constraints. And a ground mounted system is a good solution if you're trying to hit a desired offset and you just don't have the footprint or the real estate on your roof to get a large enough array to meet that offset goal. So sometimes you can be limited and you can consider a ground mount. So there's more area to install, a larger solar array to hit those goals.
Awesome. And some roofs, when we get on the roof, we see obstructions like chimneys, vents, dormers, skylights, which can cause some complexity to a roof installation.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's true as well. Good point, Caitlin. Yeah, sometimes, like going back to the former question, sometimes roofs are just small just by design, but sometimes the limited roof footprint and the ideal orientation is due to obstructions such as chimneys or vent pipes. You have dormers or skylights, and that can really cut into contiguous available space to install the system size that you desire to meet your offset goal. So in that situation, a ground mounted system again would be a good solution to that.
Awesome. Roofing material. So I know sometimes folks call us and they have certain type of roofing material that is non-standard, that is prohibitive. Is that right?
Yeah, we can install like roofing material that we have, the attachment details and flashing details for that are typical is asphalt shingles is fine. Standard metal roofing is fine. Standing seam metal roof is also fine. We've got an S5 clamp to attach the panels and the rail to that type of roofing structure. But if the roof is made of a slate roof, for instance, we would not advise a roof install for that type of situation, just because oftentimes we do have to make roofing penetrations and we would not want to crack the slate roofing material, and we would more than likely advise that you install a ground mounted system just to maintain the integrity of the roof.
Awesome. So this is something that comes up from time to time. Maybe someone's roof isn't in shape to get solar installed right now. Does that make them a good candidate for a ground mounted solar array?
Yeah, good question. That potentially so. If someone was not ready to do a roof replacement at the time of solar and they were ready to move forward with solar, sooner than later, and they didn't want the added expense of re-roofing, or if they didn't want the additional expense of uninstalling and reinstalling the panels to accommodate a re-roof, a ground-mounted system would be a good way to, have the solar installed and not have to impact the roof at all, and then you could make the decisions on re-roofing later when the timing was right.
Great. Great. So that's kind of our list of the reasons that someone might consider a ground mounted array. And a ground mount isn't always by any means the route that we steer people. And there are definitely many advantages of a rooftop array as well. Jamey, what are some advantages of a rooftop array?
Aesthetics are different for everybody. Some people would rather have the panels installed on the roof so they're higher up and out of view, from their yard, and kind of out of sight. If they have it in the backyard and they've got a deck there and a pool, they may not want to look at a ground mounted array in the yard. Though we are, pretty strategic about placing the panels where they're going to perform the best, but also meet the customer's aesthetics, whether on the roof or ground. But some people want them up off the ground just for aesthetic reasons. That's their preferred aesthetic. So.
Yeah, great. And not many people have this space, right? So I mentioned you work sometimes with rural populations. So if you're in a city, maybe a ground mount isn't even possible.
That's true as well, and that's a good point. Sometimes in urban areas, you know, you don't have the yard size or the lot size to accommodate the solar panel array on the ground. So that's when a roof mounted installation would more than likely be the case in that territory, and kind of limit you to that option is for a roof mounted installation. In rural areas, oftentimes you have the option to either put them on the house roof. Sometimes older farmhouses have, you know, slate roofs or limited roofs, but they have barns that are wide open and orientated ideally, or they have ground space. So sometimes there's a little bit more variety or option there for where we can mount the solar panel installation.
Great. So another thing that comes up, how does maintenance work around like a ground mounted array? Is that kind of a hardship for the homeowner? Are there ways to get around kind of the awkward mowing?
Good question. Yeah, I mean, there are things that we can do to kind of help with that. We can install some ground coverage under the array, or we can install gravel under the array to keep some of that vegetation down from underneath the array, so you don't have to get your lawn care equipment or weed whacker in there to kind of manage that. So that's something that we can include in the installation to help with that, to help manage that. I know that the measurement typically from the the racking system that we use primarily is snap and rack, where we can install the panels 4 high, and we install them in landscape mode. So that vertical measurement from the very top of the panel to the ground is about 14 feet. So you can access under the array. It doesn't make it impossible to access under the array if you needed to keep vegetation down. But we can definitely install some landscaping material to help with that.
Great. So some of my next questions have to do with some of the specifications of our ground mounted systems. Is there a standard length of a solar array that is ground mounted?
Yeah, it depends on the number of panels. Like I said, you know, the ground mounted array is the panels are orientated in landscape mode. So that means the horizontal measurement is going to be the longer measurement, which is that I think the panels are about 66 inches in landscape, that horizontal measurement would be. So how long the array is depends on, you know, how large the system size is, how many panels we're installing to make that array to meet the customer goals. So, right. You know, there's not really, I think, a max size. It just would depend on the customer offset goals and the available space.
Yeah, great. Do they come at a standard height?
You mean in the height of the panel, or that vertical measurement, or that rise measurement? Yeah, it's about, I think the panels are 39 inches. I always kind of say 42 inches because there's just a little bit of spacing for the clips in between the panels. So
okay,
that's the panel dimensions. Yeah. And then of course we install the panels 4 high. We stack them 4 high.
Great. Is there a typical type of racking that we use?
Again, yeah, the ground mounted racking that we typically use is snap and rack. I know that we also use iron ridge racking as well for ground mounted arrays. There are some racking systems that allow you to put the panels in portrait orientation. So the array is not as tall, but it will be longer. Because that type of racking system, we usually, when we're stacking the panels in a portrait orientation, we usually stack the panels 2 high. So you'll have an array 2 panels high, but then that's going to make your horizontal length, or the horizontal measurement, the footprint of that array, longer.
Great.
So when we stack it the other way, you know, 4 high and in landscape, we can compact or condense the array a little bit more.
Got it. So I know that a lot of probably conversations go in to making this decision with someone who's thinking about going solar. You're talking about goals, you're talking about space, that kind of thing. One thing a lot of folks ask us is a ground-mounted system, is it typically more expensive than a roof-mounted system? And I know there are a lot of variables there, but what would you say?
Yeah, good question. And ground mounts are typically more in installation cost than roof mounted systems, just because of we have to trench the solar panel connection back to the point of interconnection at the home's electric service.
Mhm.
So we have that additional detail and scope of work in the project. And also there is some additional labor and concrete work to anchor the racking system into the ground. And then, like I said, if we add things to the project, such as, you know, the landscaping, detail to help with that, help with the landscaping and keeping vegetation down, that can be an added expense to the solar system too. I'd say typically a ground mounted system is going to be about 10%, maybe 15% more in cost, depending on the trenching length, trenching distance, in relationship to a roof mounted array. Yeah.
Great. I'm going to share this PowerPoint. Can everyone see my PowerPoint? Can you see it, Jamie?
I do, but it's not maximized.
Okay. Oh, I started with the last photo. I gave it away. Oh, well, here. Do you see it in full screen?
Yes, now I do.
Yeah. Okay, great. So do you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about this system and maybe why they chose a ground mounted array?
Yeah, so this residence here, I believe, is in the Marietta area. And they chose a ground mounted system because you can see that they have a ceramic tile roof. So that's one of those instances where we wouldn't want to do a roof mounted installation because we wouldn't want to crack the ceramic tiles, and damage the integrity of that type of roofing material. And also you can see that they have a lot of complex roof angles that won't serve a nice streamlined contiguous array. It would be all kind of broken up, which would add to the cost of a roof mounted project too, to make all of those connections. We would also want to avoid some exterior conduit because that may not, take away from the aesthetics of the home. So in this instance, this customer was better served by a ground mounted system. In my initial conversation with them, we were already in agreement with that. And he had chose the location where he wanted the panels because he was doing tree removal, as you can see. And then it's on a slope, obviously. So it's kind of high, it's high up, it's on a slope, but it was close enough to the house where we wouldn't have probably a trenching distance that exceeded 200 feet. So that was an ideal location to meet the customer's goals. And you can see here that we're using a racking system. I think this was unirack racking. And this is a racking system where we did 2 arrays because he had an offset goal in mind. And he was only, going to have this amount of area available, and that's all the tree removal that was going to be done on site. And so instead of doing 1 long array, we broke up the system into 2 arrays and staggered them. But these panels are orientated in what we call portrait mode, and it's with a racking system that stacks the panels too high.
Awesome. Very cool. Beautiful home. Beautiful solar. So I'm going to give it away at the beginning. Full disclosure, this actually isn't a ground mounted system. This is just a good example that we wanted to share of a long trenching distance. Jamie was talking about trenching before, and you can follow this trench. Do you know how long this trenching work was, Jamie?
Oh, I don't know it offhand, but I think it was between 500 and 700 feet from where the electric service was. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can see, I think in this picture, it's pretty obvious, right, why this home wasn't ideal for solar. It's in the middle of the woods.
That's right.
It's beautiful and shaded, and a lot of times people call and we can't even, see their house, right, from the initial call, because it's totally shaded. But that doesn't mean that solar isn't possible.
That is correct, and that's a great point. This is a local customer, and we do have, we're very lucky to live in an area of the world that's 80% forested, and we love our trees too, but there are limitations sometimes where people live if they want solar, and this house is up on a hill. The primary residence is up on a hill right smack in the middle of the woods. And they really wanted to go solar. They're a big environmentalist, they're environmental educators. They wanted solar so bad that we actually were able to make this trenching distance and cross a bridge and a creek to get the connection all the way up to the house. I actually, when I was first talking with this customer, I was scratching my head on this, and I was just like, oh, this has feasibility issues. This has feasibility issues, just because of the bridge and the creek, having to try to figure out how to cross that safely and, to code. And so I pulled in one of our project managers, and he was like, let's go out, let's look at it. So we did, and we measured off the trenching distance from the barn all the way up to the house. We looked at the different ways that we could run the conduit, which we actually connected to the bridge, to the side of the bridge, to get that connection all the way up to the house, and they went solar. It was a more complex trench, and it was, an atypical project. It was an atypical trenching run, but we were able to do it, and we gave them solar. We put solar on their property, and they're super, super happy.
Yeah, great. And that the trenching work, that is in the middle of the project. So by no means is this like the finished version of either the stream crossing or the trench itself. That's not what it looks like anymore. But just to give an idea of how long and what that looked like when we were in progress.
Yeah, that's fresh work. It's a freshly dug trench, and then we make all of our all of those connections are encased in conduit, so it's not a direct burial of any of the wires when we trench. It's always in conduit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they're pictured as one of our project managers who worked on this project, doing a final walkthrough with this customer, and kind of explaining some of the system details to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So those are the pictures that we've got. And I'm going to open it up now to any Q&A from the folks that are with us, whether on Facebook or on or here in our Zoom chat. So go ahead, use the comment box, use the chat feature if you have any Q&A. And Jamey, I'll prompt you in the meantime. Do you have anything, I don't know, anything that you would like to cover more regarding ground-mounted systems that you feel like we didn't get to, or do you think we covered it pretty thoroughly?
I do get questions from people asking about removing, snow for both roof-mounted and ground-mounted installations. And of course, we don't advise with a roof-mounted installation that you try to access your roof during winter weather, where it's slippery and dangerous for you to do that. I know that ground-mounted systems do give you an advantage to kind of clean off light dustings of snow with a really soft broom. For those that want to do that, it's not necessary that you do that. The systems will still perform with a little bit of snow coverage on them anyway, whether on their roof or ground. Of course, they're orientated south, so that's, where the snow melts. You're getting sun exposure more there than you would on eastern and western elevations, and the snow will melt and automatically kind of slough off because of the tilt angle. And in our performance performance estimations that we provide, we do account for the seasonality of our area. We pull in the weather data for our longitude and latitude and include that into the solar offset projections and the solar performance. So it's not necessary that you clean your panels, but if you do have a ground mounted system, you do have access to broom, light dustings of snow off. We don't recommend that you try to chisel any hard ice off. You could scratch the surface of the panels and kind of impact performance that way by damaging the panels. But if you wanted to, you could do that. And I do know some people with ground mounted that do that. You're on mute, Caitlin.
Thanks, Jamey. I am not seeing any questions come through, which is just fine. If you are watching this also in the future, we will be monitoring on Facebook, and we'll also get this uploaded to YouTube. So you can ask us questions then. We'll be sure to respond. If you have any questions, you also, if you're watching us on Zoom, you'll receive a follow-up email. We have a question that just came in. In Ohio, what angle have you been ground mounting panels at, winter or summertime bias?
Mm-hmm. I believe that the ground mounted systems are angled at a 30-degree tilt. So that's the typical, I think, angle for a ground mounted array. Mm-hmm. But in our area, anything between a 412 and a 712 is sufficient. That's either, that's for roof mounted systems. Of course, like I said, ground mounted systems, we do kind of have more of a fixed tilt of about 30 degrees. I think I have seen some arrays that we've done at a 40-degree tilt, but that's, typically 30 degrees.
I heard Michelle told me once, our CEO and co-founder, she said that it's whatever latitude that you're at is the ideal tilt that the panel should be at. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's correct.
Cool.
But anything between, like I said, for roof mounted systems, anything between a 412 and a 712. So that's between 18-degree tilt and 30-degree tilt. And of course, for roof mounted systems, we don't have control over that. We're flush mounting to whatever tilt angle there is. But for the ground mounted systems, it's typically 30 degrees.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay, great. No additional questions coming in. We'll watch for it, but again, I'll remind folks, take a look at our YouTube page. We've got a lot of good conversations just like this that we've had with Jamey, with some of our other consultants, doing deep dives into really specific issues that we hear questions about all the time. So connecting with our audience in this way, answering these questions is a new thing that we're doing, something we're excited about. Excited to connect with everyone in this way. So looking forward to seeing you all in the future. Thanks so much for your time, Jamey.
Yeah, thank you, Caitlin.
Take care.
Participants.
Yeah, thanks, participants. We'll see y'all at the next one.
Have a good day.